Welcome to our devotion for Thursday the 28th. 1 Samuel chapter 28 is certainly a different chapter is what we ought to say. And so anyway, let's dive in there and see some of the things that we might learn from this ourselves. We learned that Samuel, the man who the books 1 and 2 Samuel are named after, who had been the prophet, the judge, a godly man, he is dead. And so Saul, though, it says, had put all the mediums and spiritualists out of the land. Seems like a right thing to do. You know, if you're a godly nation, you don't need mediums and spiritualists and palm readers and tea leaves and whatever, all those, psychic hotline, all that stuff. So he's put them out. But it's what happens here. Israel and the Philistines are drawing up battle lines once again. And when Saul sees all the vast army of the Philistines, basically it says he was afraid and his heart greatly trembled. Saul was afraid. So he does what seems like a good thing. Saul inquires of the Lord, but the Lord didn't answer him, either by dreams or the Urim or the prophets. So here's what Saul does. Saul said to his servants, "Find me a woman who is a medium, that I may go and inquire of her." Apparently Saul knew that these weren't right. He'd put them out of the land. But God wasn't showing up and giving him his answer. And we know from reading previous chapters why a lot of that is. But he decided to resort to witchcraft, if you will. And sometimes I wonder, maybe when God doesn't answer us right away, how easy it is for us to resort to some other things because we feel like we've got to get the answer. Well, some of Saul's servants says, hey, there is a lady at Endor and who's a medium. So Saul, he disguises himself because he certainly doesn't want her to know who he is. And he goes and he says, will you please conduct a seance for me and bring up the person I ask you from the dead? Well, the woman says, hey, you know what Saul's done, how he has cut off the mediums and the spiritualists from the land. Why then do you lay a snare for my life to cause me to die? I find this one of the most interesting statements in this chapter. Saul swore to her by the Lord, saying, so the Lord, as the Lord lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this thing. I want you to have a seance. I want you to practice witchcraft. I want you to call a spirit back from the dead so I can ask a question. You know, King Saul says that mediums aren't allowed in the land. As the Lord lives. I swear to you by the Lord, no harm's going to come to you. Wow, isn't it easy? It's amazing how we can say words and somehow make ourselves feel like things are all right. You know, it's kind of, folks, this isn't imagination. I have seen it where a preacher stood before a camera and said, God has told me to leave my wife and marry my secretary, and the people applauded. In other words, he took wickedness and he spun it as if God's stamp of approval was upon it. And you know, if we're not discerning, we can fall for that. We can probably even convince ourselves of that. God's not answering me, so God would have me go and practice witchcraft. Well, we know what happens. She does call Samuel's spirit. And Samuel wants to know why Saul has disturbed him. And he said, well, I'm deeply distressed. He answers Samuel, I'm deeply distressed. The Philistines, they war against me, and God has departed from me, and he does not answer me anymore, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called you, that you may reveal to me what I should do. Samuel said, why do you ask me, seeing the Lord has departed from you and has become your enemy? I tell you, as a spiritual leader, there's some tough stuff in this chapter to grab hold of. We live in a day where we are pressed to not offend people, where we are pressed to kind of handle people with kid gloves. And you know, there's times that we just have to speak sometimes some hard words to people. Words that they probably don't want to hear. I've witnessed something over the years as a pastor. I've had people come to me and ask me a question. And you know what? It wasn't because they wanted to really know what I had to say about it or what the Lord had to say about it. They were hoping I would give approval. They had already maybe asked a couple other people, and they told them it was wrong. So they were kind of going down the rows of preachers. And if they had to ask 4 or 5, they would eventually find somebody who would say, oh, it's all right. And then they could ease their conscience. But Samuel, the guy who had anointed Saul, says, if God has rejected you, why do you come to me? Anyway, I wish I could leave us on a better note, but I do think it gives us, on Sunday, we talked about mercy and truth. And there's times that we just have to speak to people God's truth into their lives. We can't candy coat it to make other people feel better when we are called to speak on behalf of the Lord.